Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Badger Pack Sports. Today, we're going to be getting into the Badgers. Going to be talking about the transfer portal for basketball. Hopefully, get into a little bit of spring practice too for the football. Just a lot of exciting things to talk about. And to talk about it, as always, joined by my co-host Justin Legal. Justin, how's it going?
Greg Gard is in the kitchen and cooking up
Ooh.
some transfers. We've had some guys come in. We've had some guys leave the program. I've been waiting for us to get together to talk about this. I think there's a
Yep.
lot of reason for excitement. So I'm ready to dive in, man. Let's talk about it.
All right, where we want to go first? We want to talk about the guys that are out or the guys coming in.
Well, I think the guys were out. We'll start with the guys that are leaving, and I think that's the
All right.
quickest topic. And just for those that haven't been following, Daniel Freitag, our four-star point guard, left. We talked about that in last week's episode. Not huge surprise there. Chris Hodges left. Not a massive surprise there. Not a huge role
No.
with the team. I think he's looking for some more experience elsewhere.
No.
One that and then we had a walk on. I can't remember his name.
No.
Rapp, I want to say is
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay,
We
that's
we
fine.
lost some quality bench warmers from last year. Guys that were just real good at keeping those spots warm on the bench.
And I think the one guy that hurts a little bit, and this just dropped today. We were recording this April 7th. Is Xavier Amos. That's a guy we've talked a little bit about in the show. He's a very polarizing player that we've had in the program.
Yep.
He was sort of our blue chip guy last year, if you remember last transfer portal season, which then Tanjay ends up taking the cake with being the guy,
Yep.
being the cream of the crop of the class. But he was a guy that a lot of people felt was ready to take the next step in Greg Gard's system
Yep.
and have a full offseason with the team and be in the scheme, because he just seemed a little bit lost at times on offense, but he had the tools and the athleticism on defense. And, he had a lot of great moments against Dawson Garcia of Minnesota. And then the Big Ten tournament, he really showed out and showed kind of his potential. So that one stings a little bit because I think he would have been one of the first guys off the bench. But I would say, those are the guys leaving. Anything, Robbie, on that really kind of sticks out to you with the guys that left?
Yeah, Amos, I definitely think that he had some talent. I think it was going to be tough just with the guys that they were bringing in. I know there was talk about with Rapp and Winter where exactly Amos was going to fit in. So, I mean, I don't know if that conversation was had with him after what happened last year, or if he just kind of saw the writing was on the wall with playing time. And I mean, at this point in time, until things change with the transfer portal, if you're not going to get the playing time, he spent a season here, he's going to look elsewhere. I mean, so that's all we can do, and wish him the best. That's all I got for him.
And that's college sports today, and you can't be emotionally attached to these players. And there's been a lot of just chatter and discussion about, the state of recruiting in basketball, and is Greg Gard and his staff really doing their best to hang on to these high school kids they bring in, like the free tags of the world. And even with transfers too, it's just I think you just have to have the mindset these are professional athletes, whether you like it or not. They may not be, had the NFL or NBA tag tied to them, but it's free agency every offseason, and they're going to move. They're going to do what's best for them and their wallet or their opportunity or the combination of the two. So we wish them nothing but the best. And we're never going to ill mouth a guy leaving the program in the right way. And I think all the guys that left, did it with class. And I think we wish them nothing but the best. But I want to take this energy, Robbie. We landed 3 dudes.
Yep.
And let's start with Nick Boyd. The news just became official. There was a lot of smoke around him coming to Wisconsin for about 3 or 4 days now. Finally, the news dropped officially. What do you know about Nick Boyd, Robbie, and what excites you about him?
Man, Nick Boyd, what excites me? A ball handler. That's what excites me. I was with the Lockdown Badger crew at that Oregon game, and we can't inbound a ball. I mean, like, that's all I want. It's like we can't beat the press coverage there. It's like the full court press. It's like if we had a ball handler like Boyd, we win that game. Like, that's what comes to my mind. It's like you get a good ball handler. I think it just helps everything. I think it benefits Blackwell. Last year, who were our top 2 guys? Who are the stars? John Blackwell and John Tanjay. And so if, to unlock that next level of Blackwell, because I think most people would agree that it was Tanjay and then Blackwell, for him to take that next step, take some of the ball handling ability, let him kind of slash, let him shoot, let him do what he does best.
Yeah, and the one word that comes to me with Boyd is experience. He's going to be in his 6th year. He was part of that FAU Final Four team a few years ago, and he's got length on the outside to help with perimeter defense. He's 6'3", 174, so he's got that wiry build, very long arms, and I think he can help at least challenge shots on the outside. I would say, he's coming from San Diego State. Historically, is a really good defensive program. A guy like Nick Boyd, though, he's been bouncing around a little bit, so I wouldn't say he's been ingrained in that system, but you can definitely say
Yeah.
he's been coached for defense. But looking at some of his numbers, he averaged 13.4 points a game last season, 4 boards, which I think for a point guard is solid. And we're gonna need all the help. And we'll talk about this in the
Yep.
episode. All the help we need in the glass and 4 assists per game. I think in this system, like you alluded to, Robbie, we need a ball handler because I think last year we ran into a few times along with pressure, like you said, but also the ball just kind of got stagnant on the outside. We fell in love with the outside shot,
Yeah.
and we really had the ball move side to side and get penetration. And I think a guy like Boyd can come in. If there's 10 seconds left on the shot clock and we need something, we need a shot to be created. I think Boyd can do it. Some wonders there. And I think him and Winter on the pick and roll game can be absolutely devastating. Getting those two working together on that can really make this offense look even better. But I think he's a tremendous fit, very wiry, very athletic, probably one of the more athletic guards we've had in the program for quite some time. So I am amped. I think he was the top guy on the board that
Yep.
Greg wanted. We beat out schools like Washington and North Carolina to get him. So I am excited and looking forward to having him on the team next season.
Yeah, no, we talked about just kind of this offensive system and how, looking at what happens here, it's like who's Greg Gard going to be able to attract, and it basically sets the table going forward. What these guys are able to do. If Greg Gard is able to kind of repeat the success that he had last year, bringing in these transfers, it could definitely be huge for this team. Just the kind of the Greg Gard, Kirk Penny, beautiful blending together. To create what they did this year. So, no, definitely excited. I don't know. And then why don't you go on with the next guy that we got?
Yeah, and Austin Rapp. We got him. He's
All right.
a freshman that we grabbed from Portland, 6'10", 230. Guy can shoot the lights out. And I think that's something that this offense predicates on, living and dying by the three. And I think next year's team, we're really gonna be feeling that. It's if our threes are falling, this team could put up points like no other. And if the shot's not falling, it might be tough to watch sometimes, which makes me a little bit nervous. But back to Rapp, 13.8 points per game, 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists, and that assist number is low. But I'm telling you, watching some of his film, he's a very underrated passer.
Yeah.
I think that's just part of the game that I think he can continue to grow and develop. And that's one thing with Crowell that he was really good at that 4 or 5 position of, if a double team comes to him, he can find the open cutter. I think Rapp has really good touch and good vision in passing, and he shot 35% from the three at volume. So I think he's a guy, more coaching and being around better players. I mean, he came from Portland. They were in the same conference as St. Mary's and Gonzaga, Washington State, Oregon State. So solid teams. But I think the talent around him let him down at times. And sometimes you watch the film and he gets the ball with like 3 or 4 seconds left in the shot clock, and they're just saying, hey, make a play. You're not going to have that at Wisconsin a whole lot.
Yeah.
So I would say I think he's got a really interesting ceiling and potential, and he's only a freshman. So we have multiple years with him for now, assuming he sticks around, right? But like it's on paper, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know, Robbie, if you had what you thought on Rapp.
Yeah, so Rapp, I was going to make sure that you brought up that he's a freshman, so definitely some room to grow there. I did want to bring up, we talked on the last show when we were talking about guys we wanted in the transfer portal, what we wanted, and we talked about the need for a guard, so that was filled with Boyd. But our top need that we were saying is we wanted a big 5, and kind of somebody who could replace Steven Crowell. And Rapp doesn't do that though, and but we talked about this before the show is that. And a lot of people are saying he can't. I think Nolan Winter can play the 5. And I looking at, what we want, it's like, okay, we got to replace Steven Crowell. I think that Winter can do what Steven Crowell did. And so I think Rapp, it's like, I know we're talking about Rapp, but not, and Winter, but it's like Rapp can kind of do what Winter was supposed to do. He can kind of be the shooter, and I think Winter's able to slide into that 5 spot and be a good facilitator. And he could also shoot. I think, it's just going to be a little bit changing of the game for what we expected, but I think you got versatile pieces, and I think that's the biggest thing that you want. And I think Rapp, will do a really good job. I think, like you said, um, this team, it seems like they're going to be passing the ball a lot and just looking for the best shot available. And, that ball movement, that's a big thing, is like, how do you get to the basket? Ball movement can get you to the basket. You know, it's like, whereas big guys, you pass it in there, you work your way to the basket, or you get a lot of guys slashing and cutting and getting there. It's like, because the movement, you're going to hopefully get a guy open there. So that's what I'm seeing with this Rapp uh, transfer pickup.
Yeah, and I think for the third guy, what you just said there transitions super well with Andrew Rohde.
Yep.
We brought him in. I think he's going to be the 3. Came in from Virginia. We talk about passing and moving the ball around. Just put the film on this guy. He is. I feel like he's quick off his feet. He has very high IQ when it comes to running the offense. And he comes from Virginia, which is not known as an offensive juggernaut. That's watching their basketball reminds me of the old Bull Ryan days of some of the bully ball we had to play just to get 50 points on the board. So I think you got to look at the potential and the metrics, which they're off the charts for him. He's coming in, averaging over four assists per game, which, believe it or not, was 7th in the ACC, which is kind of crazy. I don't know why the assist numbers are so low, but we'll take it. And again, 9 points a game, I think that can go up in our scheme because we're shooting the ball a heck of a lot more than Virginia. 41% from 3, so he's a perimeter threat. I think he's experienced. He's coming in. He originally started at St. Thomas in Minnesota, then transferred to Virginia, and now coming home to Wisconsin. He's a local kid. It kind of gives you that Max Klesmit kind of vibe where, he left for a few years and now he's coming back. He's actually stealing his number, wearing number 11. It almost feels like a Max Klesmit,
Yeah.
but 6'6". So I think he's definitely got more size than Klesmit. I think he can help defend on the perimeter. I don't think he's an elite defender, but watching it, I think he's competent and really solid and can provide a huge improvement from what we had last year, I would think, in the perimeter. So yeah, Andrew Rohde, I think he could be a really nice piece in this offense and just for the team.
Yeah, no, I think Rhodey's going to be a really good asset to the team, and it's nice. It seems like to me, we got our starting 5 locked in. Where you got Boyd. Boyd's going to be at the 1. Then you got Blackwell at the 2. You got Rhodey at the 3. Then you're going to have Rapp at the 4 and Winter at the 5. And I'm okay with that starting lineup. Now, obviously, with the transfers out, our bench is weak now, but we still got time. But it's like, I'm excited for what Greg Gard can do, which is a long way from my fire guard days. But he made
Come a long
changes.
way. You've come a
He
long
made
way, Robbie.
changes. I'm okay with allowing people to change. You always gotta, allow for people to change, and he did that, and I'm impressed. Hats off to you, Greg Gard. Hats off.
Yeah, I guess for me, one question I have for you is what that starting 5. I guess give me one positive thing that you're looking forward to, and give me one thing you're maybe a little bit concerned with how it's constructed.
Yeah, I think obviously the positive is gonna be the offense. You're gonna have shooters at almost every position. You can't leave anyone open. Gone are the Tyler Wall days of that guy's not gonna shoot, or you know the pre Gilly James days of Carter Gilmore not gonna shoot a 3. So you had all these guys that it's like, well, we don't really have to guard him. You can't do that with this team anymore. And like I said, I think with that, if you have to guard the 3-point line, that will also leave the basket open. So that's what's exciting there. Defense is probably going to be the biggest issue. It's like when you're scoring a lot, it just kind of brings the defense down in general. Um, but it's defense is a team thing. It's mentality. So I think defense can really change. Just one, obviously based on the game and just the chemistry of the players out there, and who's got to help who, and once they learn how to work together, I think that's something that can be improved on.
Yeah, I'm with you. And for me, I think the thing I'm most excited about is the fireworks. It's going to be fun. This is going to be a fun team to
Yeah.
watch. The phrase, or this isn't your grandfather's Badgers. Like I think, the way we're building this roster, I think is it's going to be a lot of fun. And I know we're not the exact team, but the team I keep thinking about is like if you watch Alabama basketball, of just the amount of points they put up and the speed they have, I think we're trying to
Yeah.
kind of get. I'm not saying we're that exact scheme, but just that excitement and that the way the ball goes into the basket. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. My biggest concern, in addition to defense, like you said, is rebounding
Yeah.
because Winter got kind of beat up a lot last year in the interior, and then Rapp really is not known as a strong rebounder. He's more of a finesse big at 6'10". I would say we have size to be in position. I just don't know if we have the strength, and that's
Yeah.
something that I'm wondering this offseason. And we talked about this last episode with Winter. I do agree with you. I could see him at the 5. I just don't know how much more weight you could put on him for him to continue to be as effective as he is with the skill set of cutting and shooting threes and being on the
Yeah.
perimeter. Because it's twofold. He could not be strong on the inside, but that means if he's matched up against a bigger 5, that could cause problems for them too, and having their big 20 feet from the basket. Imagine like a Morez Johnson from that transfer to Michigan trying to cover Winter on the outside. That could be advantageous for us too. So I am curious to see. And the other thing too is the transfer portal is still open. There's definitely going to be. I definitely expect us to look for a physical guy or two to go on the bench because you need those Gilmore and McGee minutes to be eaten up.
Yep.
And now Amos leaving too. That's another hole. So I expect there to be more moves for us to talk about, coming forward. So I don't know that's kind of where I'm at, but I would say I am optimistic. These are 3 plan A guys that we hit.
Yep.
And that can't be emphasized enough. Like these guys were the top of the list. The Badgers were not in the mix, and another team like North Carolina signs them. We beat teams like Iowa State for Rohde. We beat for Rapp. Rapp was visiting Oregon. He was also visiting Iowa. We beat some pretty good schools to get these guys. So now we have to see the results on the court. We need to see how we can build the depth because that's probably the number one concern for me is the depth overall. Is like we need to get that bench beefed up and ready to go. But I'm excited. I bring them on, Guard. Keep
Yep.
cooking back there, man. Keep stay on the phones.
Well, if they invested money, which they obviously did to get these guys, it's you will keep getting that money if it works. If it doesn't, then you lose money and then you don't get as good of players. So it's kind of twofold. It's like the offense is working, you're going to attract more guys, and then you get the money along with it to get those guys. But unfortunately, then if it doesn't work out like it did this year, you lose interest and you lose money. So it's kind of it's a double negative or a double positive. So hopefully we get the double positive. But a positive we can jump into is the Badgers spring practices. It's like Badger spring practice, always exciting. It is the season of optimism. Optimism is blooming. Hopefully we get some warmer weather in Wisconsin because it's still been kind of chilly. I want to see some more, blooming flowers and, get outside.
I had
But
snow on the I had snow on the
yep,
ground this morning on April 7th, and come on now, like I'm with you. I need some life outside
yeah.
right now.
So, Jeff Grimes, like Greg Gard, they're cooking. He's cooking, we're getting the ball, running. We got the quarterback under center, heard some things just from spring practice as far as them throwing the ball. Just, it's not the air raid. So they're not getting as many opportunities to show what they're doing there necessarily. So there's been more runs. I know the one practice, every quarterback had an interception, but I mean, it's like they're out there throwing right now. It's like you can't be afraid to throw the ball. It's like I can't throw an interception in practice. No, now is the time to throw an interception. Don't throw 4 like Tanner Mordecai, but let it go out there. Work with your receivers. So that was good to hear that Billy Edwards is the clear number 1. That's nice to hear. We're not in a competition of 1A and 1B with Tyler Van Dyke and Braden Locke. So that's nice to hear. Justin, what have you been hearing from spring practice?
Yeah, just to keep the theme with the quarterbacks, for me, it's the stuff off the field. Been hearing a lot of great reviews and people talking about Billy Edwards and leading off the field as much as he is on the field.
Yep.
And I feel like I know that's going back to the basics, but just having that presence in the room, I've almost felt like it's been missing for the last few years. It
Yeah.
just seems like he's getting buy-in from the guys in the locker room, and there's something to it. I played the position in high school at a very low level, but like there's just something to it going into the huddle and guys looking at you in the eye, knowing like, hey, I can believe in my quarterback. And I think with Billy Edwards, I think he's understanding the importance of that. And
Yeah.
I think again, it's spring. We can, who knows how they're looking at it if we're down 38-0 Ohio State. Hopefully we're not, but it's just those things, those intangibles that you don't see in the film room or you don't see on the spring practice field. I think he's really building a connection with these guys and building a sense of brotherhood within the team. We'll see if that translates to wins and losses,
Yeah.
but I think that's just one thing I've been hearing, and it is positive to hear, and I do enjoy hearing about it.
Yeah, he was out ice fishing with the linemen. They were catching bluegill. So that was good to see. Just getting out there on the lakes and in Wisconsin, right there by the stadium. So, that's always a good thing. And then, something I put on the Badger Discord for Lockdown Badgers that we're both on. But I'm surprisingly optimistic about the depth in this wide receiver room. And I say that because I have followed Badgers for a long time, and I remember guys like Cade Green and Emmett Perry, who most people don't. Those are some name drops. You can go look them up. I forget, it's like 2014, 2015. They were on the roster, but they almost never saw the field. Um, Taj Mustafa, there's all these random names that you've probably never heard of. But I think of guys like Chris Brooks. He caught a pass last year. Burrows has been knocking on the door. It's like, and then Eugene Hilton Jr., freshman, his name's getting called, and these are just the back end guys. So like, it's like you are still hearing about, you know, Vinny Anthony. You got him, obviously. You got Jaden Ballard.
He's
I like to
showing out.
yeah. I call them together. That's the twin turbo package. So I don't know if they'll call it that, but that's what I'm going to call it. And and then you also got, your tight end in Cozio. Like there's a lot of excitement there with these guys.
Yeah, and the receiver room's interesting because Trech Kahuna has been out this spring with, I think it was an
Yep.
ankle concern. It sounds like long term it's not a problem. They're being very cautious with him. But a guy that's also stood out is Tyrell Henry. We brought him in the transfer portal from Michigan State last year.
Yep.
It's been very quiet, it coming into the program. But this year it sounds like him and Billy Edwards have built a nice connection, and he's taking advantage of the opportunity of Trech being out. So it'll be interesting to see when fall comes, what kind of role Tyrell Henry has, because he's at that point to take a leap in the program as well. So I'm with you. It's like I think the receiver room's exciting, and under Grimes' offense, you're going to need a bunch of different types of guys. You're going to need the twin turbos, like you said. You're going to need guys to do the jet sweeps and the motions and all the different misdirection stuff and stuff underneath. So I'm really interested to see who comes out of that room. And Eugene Hilton, another name. And we also been hearing
Yep.
reports that his dad, Ty, has been at practice, kind of coaching the
Yep.
receivers a little bit and helping out. That is awesome to see.
Yeah.
You can't. That's exciting for me, and it's cool to see his dad kind of bought into the program a bit too.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see if he gets any looks as a freshman.
Yeah, no, it's like, and then we'll kind of jump into that, because we got Ty, who's a former Colt, another former Colt that it's like you wish would come in and kind of coach the running backs a little bit. Frank Gore, because you got Rico Hallman as his stepdad, so that'd be kind of cool. But going into those running backs, I'm hearing good things about Dylan Jones, and I've been higher on Dylan Jones than maybe some other people have. Most people, it's like you got your Dylan Jones guys and your Darion Dupree guys. And I've been, as far as running the ball, because I do like what Darion Dupree can do in the passing game and getting him to the outside. But as far as running the ball, I've always been a bigger fan of Dylan Jones. Just his ability, just watching the high school tape, was he was able to hit a hole and just he was slippery. Like guys would be close, they might get a little bit of a hand on him, but he was running out of those tackles and just making good yardage. And like the one big run he had last year, I think that was a prime example. And so I think that's what we can see, like, optimistically from Dylan Jones, is just kind of being able to get to that one cut and go.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward for my guy Katie Akamelli. So I want to see
Yep.
what kind of role he has. Luke Fickle did talk about him specifically in one of his
Yep.
practice pressers, acknowledging the fact that Cade, you know, was a little disappointed in how last year ended, along with the rest of us Badger fans. I think we were all pretty fired up for him, averaging over 8 yards a carry. So I'm curious to see how Grimes splits the carries between Jones, Dupree, and Yakimelli, and I think there's opportunities for all three of those guys. You also got to be careful, though, to not split them up too much where backs aren't getting into a rhythm in the game, because I think that's very important too. But yeah, I'm with you. I've heard, Dylan Jones sounds like he's maybe the front runner kind of coming into fall, but lots can change between now and then too.
Yeah, I know they were saying that Cade's obviously kind of a bigger guy, just kind of built differently. So it'd be interesting to see if they kind of have like a red zone package for him, just kind of like when they go under center or something like that. So no, definitely excited to see what Cade Yakimelli can do, because obviously he does have speed. He's been one of Brady Collins's top speed guys whenever looking at those charts that he posts. So it'll definitely be exciting to see him. Then just jump into the defensive side of the ball. Somebody else who I'm hearing is looking fast, Tackett Curtis, healthy and fast. And it's
Do you
like we
like do you
already
like Tackett Curtis? I forgot. Are you a
oh
Tackett Curtis
oh
guy?
I've liked Tackett Curtis since high school, since before. It's like I told my cousin, I said, Tackett Curtis is the make or break guy for the recruiting class. And then he went to USC, and my heart was a little broke. And then he ended up coming back to Wisconsin. Coming home, even though he's from Louisiana. It's like this is where he was meant to be. So just had the sports hernia surgery. Obviously slowed him down. It's kind of right by the abdomen and stuff like that. It's just it's gonna hurt to run. It's like you can't lift, and it's like so that's gonna slow you down. You got to build that strength back up. And he still played last year.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's like,
And he flashed. He still had flashes last year too. And that
yeah,
was not being 100%. One concern in the linebacking core room, Thomas Heiberger, moved him from the edge into the interior. It sounds like he is down for spring now with some sort of leg injury. I hate that college does not, college teams do not provide a lot of
yeah,
information like the NFL. Like the NFL, you got Adam Schefter tweeting 5 minutes after the injury
yeah,
happens. What's going on? So, it's this mysterious leg injury. He probably went down on a punt play or something, which is even more
yeah,
frustrating on special teams. But there's been no indication of the severity of this injury. We're hoping that he can rehab it in spring and be ready to go, come fall, because I think he's going to be a big piece to have in the linebacking room. And a lot of us have been talking about him, and
yep.
you hate to see it for him. I know he's had injuries bugging him in his early career in Wisconsin. We just, we wish him well, and hopefully he can recover and be ready to go for fall.
Yeah, no, definitely it's a worry. You think of the name, just Aaron Witt, who's still on the team and hoping he can do something, but it's just, all those surgeries back to back and just not being able to play. Uh, that's just really rough. But, Sebastian Cheeks is still there, kind of doing similar things. The defense, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, they've changed their kind of like how they're aligning. They got a lot bigger up front. Almost everyone's kind of getting over to that 300 pounds. Last year, it's like I looked at Cincinnati's, defensive line and just going through their depth chart and everything. They just had so much more depth, and yeah, they had a lot bigger guys. So you could see that that's something that Wisconsin would probably want to move towards. So I think they were able to do that. It's like, and I do think that we have the talent at inside linebackers with the speed. I mean, you look at what Jametta ran a couple years ago for the 40. Now it's like around a 4.8, and then it's like, oh, well, I'm blanking on his name. Who was our outside linebacker last year that we brought in
Uh,
from Arkansas? Jaheim Thomas. Jaheim
Gene
Thomas ran
Thomas.
run run like a 4.9. Like that's just not the speed that we actually need there. But now we got guys who can flow to the ball. So you got your bigger guys, that are just going to be able to let those quick linebackers go and eat. So that's what I'm looking forward to right there on the defense.
Yeah. Yeah, the defense, there's a lot of question marks, and for me, I think the biggest question mark is the staff and the scheme and
Yep.
Tressel, and we did a whole episode dedicated to that guy, and we don't need to. You can go
Yeah.
back into our archives and watch that video on
Yeah.
Tressel. I'm sure we'll do more content on him. I'm taking the updates from camp and all the and in
Yeah.
practice, and I'm being cautiously optimistic. It's just I think our
Yeah.
defense is just it's tough, and we have our interior. One of the biggest things they've talked about on the interior line is the guys just look bigger, and they do
Yeah.
over 300 pounds. Again, though, like, can you equate size to success? Not necessarily, right? So I think the proof's in the pudding. We're going to have to see. I'm more curious about what that starting front four is going to look like. We brought in a lot of guys. Parker Peterson, Corey Walker's another guy that people have been talking about. I know I'm blanking on a lot of names at the moment, but a lot of guys that they've brought into that room from the portal, but also a couple of guys they retained from last year. I'm just curious to see who's going to get the amount of the higher amount of snaps, and how effective are they going to be stopping the run.
Yeah.
I want the run to be stopped. That is my number one goal. The pass defense, I don't care. I mean, I do care. I don't want to throw in 500 yards a game on us, but we got to stop the run in the Big Ten. You have to. And if you struggle a little bit in the past, you'll live with it. But that we'll see.
Yep. No, they got Charles Perkins here on the D line. He's listed at 316. Javar Suggs, who I've heard good things, got him out of LSU.
Yep.
He's 299. Ben Barton 323. Dylan Johnson's at 293. So that's good. And he looked good last year, played as a freshman. Will McDonald and Nolan Villas, guys who probably won't play. They're just a little bit under 300. Jamal Howard, guy who's supposed to be good. Maybe he could do something. He's still young. He's 313. Ernest Willard Jr. is listed on here at 245, but I think they were trying to move him to outside.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier Okponu, 6'2", 305. Brandon Lane, 6'3", 320. And then Torrin Petaway, he's a freshman, 6'5", 273. Parker Peterson, 6'4", 315. So definitely some good size there as far as just the defensive line. It's like most everyone's 300 pounds. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the rotation goes. But also, it's just going to be, now we can hopefully keep our guys rested even with this size. Maybe that's one of the reasons that you're at 290, 300 because that extra 10 pounds. Well, yeah, you might be better on the line, but you can't stay out there as long. So it's like, but now we got guys who can rotate. Go ahead, add the extra 10 pounds because you can get a little bit of a break.
Yeah, and that's good too. And especially in the Big Ten, where you have teams like Iowa that like to run the football, and Minnesota and other schools. I think it's a great point to have a rotation of guys come in, so you're not relying on the same 3 or 4. They're getting gassed by the third quarter. The stuff we used to do to teams back in our heyday when we ran the ball is we would just pound them until they were exhausted. So
yep.
We'll see. The jury's still out. Have we heard any special teams updates? Anything on the kicker and punter? I mean, I know.
I've heard Vakos was hitting them, so that's been good. The first year Vakos, it was like I was always like, oh, Vakos guaranteed to make a field goal. It's like anytime I was doing a score prediction, I always threw a field goal in there because I'm like, Vakos is going to hit. And then last year he had some issues. End of his first year here, he had some back issues. So hopefully that all gets straightened out. A lot of that, I think, because Alex Bertram's is Australian. I have heard that they sometimes have issues holding. So maybe another year of just getting practice holding, maybe that will help too. It's like everyone always thinks it's the kicker, but sometimes it can be the snapper and the holder. So,
yeah, I know Bakos, he struggled last year. It'd be nice to see that get cleaned up.
Yep.
Left a lot of points on the board, and every point's going to count, I think, this year. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, for those that are attending, April 19th is the open spring practice. I will be in attendance with my son, so please pop your name in the comments if you want to meet up, or if you're in the Badger Discord. Would love to connect with people and see the team in person. And I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how this Grimes offense looks. It sounds like the big phrase is eye candy, a lot of motion and movement and pro style stuff. Like, a lot of people have been comping it to like similar to what the Packers run, a lot of misdirection and stuff, pre-snap to get defenses to declare what they're running and to determine mismatches. So I'm actually curious to see how Billy Edwards uses that, and can he process and read those, take a reading from those and quickly so he can make the accurate read, whether it's an RPO or a quick pass or whatever Grimes has cooked up. So I'm looking forward to being there in April 19th and seeing how things are looking.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's another thing that I've heard about Billy Edwards is, he seems like an experienced quarterback, which is why you got him. It's like he's able to make the intermediate passes, which I think is huge. I mean, you look at Locke, it's like everyone's like he can make the intermediate passes, but he can also throw it to a linebacker right in the middle. So it's like I think as long as you have your safety net and Koziel, but then you got your twin turbo package, and I think you just got a lot of weapons. And as long as we can move the ball consistently, like that's huge, not only for our offense but for our defense. I mean, the 3-and-outs we had last year just put our defense in terrible positions, I think, as well. So it's like I think that was always something that I was impressed with Jack Cohn on is like I just feel like for a while he had a lot of success on third down, and that's huge. Even if you can just get one first down, it's like just to give that defense a little bit more of a rest. I think that's huge, and I think that's something Billy Edwards can provide for this team.
Yeah. Well, and Robbie, just to kind of close this out, we did, just a little bit before we recorded this episode, we got a little bit of much needed 2026 recruiting news.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, Carmelo, we got
Carmelo Reed. Yep,
Carmelo
out of
Reed. That's
Illinois.
it.
Yep, Carmelo Reed out of Illinois. Definitely excited, to get a prospect out of Illinois. The other two are from Indiana, so it's like everyone was kind of getting annoyed that, we're getting all these guys outside of our 300-mile radius that Fickle talked about when he first got in there. But kind of going back to the roots here with Illinois and Indiana. But no, first play on his huddle as far as his junior tape, it's like he's standing up. He's quick. I mean, I think they have him listed at like 6'6", 6'7", 250 pounds, but just seems like an explosive athlete. I saw someone say kind of comparing to Samuel Leteju. So I think definitely if he's able to put size on, and I had to rewatch it actually because I thought he was snap jumping because of how fast he got off the ball sometimes, and he wasn't. It seemed legit. It just seemed like once that ball was gone, he was committed. There was one play where I think there was only two defensive linemen, and somehow he still got into the backfield right away, which I feel like when it's 2-on-5, that shouldn't happen. But he was able to do it. So I think just that explosiveness off the snap, even when he was in a 3-point stance, that was always nice to see. It was really weird, actually. The first couple plays, all four guys were standing up. But no, I think Guy can play in a 3-point stance. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him. Obviously, the size, 250. I would think he'd still be able to add weight, though. So I think maybe, like I said, it'll be interesting. I think that's one of those guys that you take as a project because it's like he still has the explosiveness, and you see what happens with him.
Yeah, and I think we'll do a much more in-depth analysis of him. I think we both need some time to watch some of his tape, and the
Yep.
announcement just hit about an hour before we jumped on. So we did want to acknowledge that the news happened. We're hoping between now and then there's more recruiting news that hits. We're targeting a couple of quarterbacks. It'd be nice to land a QB and break down some of their film, but recruiting time is always exciting, and I know there's a lot of anxious fans out there to get this 2026 class off the road. So I think that's a great place to close.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I am looking forward to more recruits coming and just getting more videos out here for Badger Pack Sports. Make sure that you're liking this video, subscribing, because like Justin said, the commits are going to be coming, and we're going to be talking about them. We're going to be talking about spring practice. We'll probably be talking, and we got more basketball stuff, because there's going to be more commits there with all these guys leaving. Obviously, it's going to be a fun time, and we're looking forward to talking with you guys about it. So tune in next time. See ya.